Hallelujah. Give Abba praise. He deserves that. Amen. What a powerful day. The Sabbath that was marked on the calendar of Yahweh before the foundation of the earth was laid. And here you and I are at this intimate occasion, anticipating his arrival. We got here earlier today, and we've just been basking in his presence. I hope that those of you that are tuned in can really sense and feel what the kind of atmosphere that I feel in this place. And I want to just echo what Shepherd John said. The Apostle Paul said, "Oh, that I might know him." Man. I want to be able to hear him, to know who he is. Especially, you'll have to pardon me, especially in view of what's in front of us as a group of people. If there was ever a season when we need to know the voice of Abba, it's now. In John 10, Yeshua said, "My sheep hear my voice, and they know my voice, and another they will not follow." In Matthew chapter 7, he said, "There will be many in that day who will say, 'Lord, didn't I do all sorts of exploits in your name?' And I will say to them, 'Depart from me. I never knew you, you workers of iniquity.'" I don't want to fall into that latter category. I want to be one of those that hears his voice. 2 weeks ago, Shepherd John shared a teaching that resonated inside my spirit, man. It was about the Our Father's prayer. And it struck me that out of all the things that the Talmudim, the disciples of Yeshua, could have asked for, I want to know how to raise the dead. I want to see blind eyes open. I want to be able to stand in front of the denizens of hell and say, "Be gone in the name of our Messiah, Yeshua." But there was, and they witnessed all of that, but there was something about the man who was prayer. And they said, "Teach us to pray." And most of y'all know me. I'm one of those individuals, I do a lot of talking. 40 years in the ministry, and I've probably spent 99.9999% of that talking to Yahweh and not listening. We have to be able to hear. Is he speaking to us today? Of course he is. Are we hearing concisely and clearly? Can we expect him to speak to us in the days that lie in front of us? Listen to me. If we cannot hear him, then we'll follow another. In order to have that kind of an intimate relationship, to be able to know who he is, so that when you're shaken in circumstances, everything from the natural that you've clung to is like a vapor. It's gone. And you can stand there and say, "I heard his voice." Then I believe that you'll be able to weather what's coming. And I'm convinced that he's raising up a group of individuals in this hour right now, that he's tickling the strings of your heart, and he's calling you into a relationship, one where you're going to have to learn how to prioritize your stuff. The things in the ministry, and I'll be honest with you, and Shepherd John can agree, I'm quite sure, there's so much ministry stuff that we could be doing, so many things that we need to be doing, but is it what he has designed for? Is it what he's called us to do? Because see, if we miss that, then we've missed the destiny, the legacy that He has for us as individuals. And I believe in this Torah portion, this week, Abba is speaking to us like we have never heard Him speak before. The title of this Torah portion is Vayiqra, and He said. And like every previous Torah portion that we've looked at, there is a prophetic bend to it. And there's things that are hidden here, and I'm going to be honest, I'm just going to lay it out plain. There are things that are hidden here that you are not going to be able to see unless you're willing to set aside the very nature of your flesh and say, I have to hear. So whatever is necessary to get out of the way in order for me to be able to hear His voice, I have to do that. Because there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of distractions, and the enemy has majored in distractions and disinformation. And if he can get you to look at things that are going on around you, the swirling noise and all of the earthquakes, the lightning, the great storms, and the great other voices, if you are motivated by that, if you're attracted to that, you're going to miss that still small voice. And when we look at this particular Torah portion this week, in the ancient text, you're going to see some things regarding Vayiqra, Yahweh speaking to Moshe. And I want you to understand, you've heard this numbers of times, but you need to look at how not only are the words, but the names are literally are embodiment, they're prophetic shadow pictures of what's to come in the future. Even the word Moshe, the person known as Moshe, he is a picture, a forerunner of the coming of the Messiah. And I believe that there's also an anointing that was on Moshe that is going to be on the collective body called Messiah in the days in front of us. And in this Torah portion, Yahweh is speaking from a very distinctive place. And as I'm standing here today sharing this word with you, one of the focal points in the religious community is the attempt by some in the religious circles to build a place that is supposedly going to be the location that I was going to speak from. In this Torah portion, it's called the Ohel Moad. And I believe that this living tabernacle of His presence is in our future. And we need to know who the tabernacle is. We need to know where that tabernacle is going to be located. And we need to know the timing and the seasons. We were admonished in the New Testament, you can look at the skies. Yeshua did this. He said, you can look at the skies and you can say, red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. Red sky at night, sailors delight. You can look at these things in the skies and you can say, yes, I can discern it. But you can't even discern the times and the seasons. If we can't determine the times and the seasons, then we're not going to be at the appointment when it's set for us. And if we break these words apart, Ma'ohel Moad, you're going to find out if in fact there is going to be a tabernacle in the future that we should be expecting Abba to speak to us from in the days that's in front of us. And I want you to look at those two words, Ma'ohel Moad, and you'll see that there is a Hebrew letter, the Hebrew letter mem, that's prefixed in front of it, and it forms a preposition, a prepositional phrase. If you've studied English, you understand what a preposition is. In this instance, the mem indicates the from or out of, it's the source of origin of whatever is to follow. But it also indicates a womb, as in a birthing place. And these two words that start out this Torah portion called Vayiqra, Ma'ohel Moad, are extremely important. And I got so consumed by these two little words that I couldn't even look any further into the Torah portion. And that's what I want you to look with me here. I want you to look at these two words, and we're going to break them apart, because this, in my opinion, it's the defining pattern or blueprint for who we are now and what we can expect in the days in front of us. The word ma'ohel comes from the root ohel, which indicates a tent of skins. I want you to raise your hand, put it on your chest, and say, I am a skin tent. Really. The root of ohel actually comes from a word that means to be shining and vibrating, just like the Ruach HaKodesh vibrated upon the waters at the inception of creation. If you have the living word of Yahweh resonating on the inside of you, you should literally be a vibrating, shining body of light, just like the original Adam was created to be. And it's interesting because if you look at this particular pattern that I'm trying to establish with you, Adam was in fact created a light being. He was a being of light. He had a body of light. And it was only after the fall that he became this, what we look at now as this fleshly, carnal skin tint. But it's interesting because we understand that that body of light literally transitions after the fall, and light becomes slowed down. Light literally becomes congealed, and the light resonating, running through the body of the Adam from that time unto this day. The blood, literally, the life that's in the flesh called the blood, is congealed or slowed down light. And it's emblematic of the means of restitution that Yahweh foreordained before the foundation of the earth, that the blood of the Lamb would serve as the restitution price for all of mankind. And so it's this blood or light that was deposited in the future Adam that's coming, our Messiah Yeshua. He is the future pattern, the future tabernacle. That word for tabernacle that follows the word mahel is the word moed. And I want you to pay close attention. You've probably heard it a million times. It's Strong's number 4150, and it indicates an appointed time, a season or appointment. How many of you know that we celebrate the Moedim, the holy convocations, right? Of which the most holy is the Shabbat, because it is the season, and you're going to see it, it's the season that Yahweh established from the inception of his creation as his signature upon a document that would literally be held in trust for those of us that would be living right now in the days in front of us. If you understand the key that the Sabbath is to accessing your inheritance, you will not trivialize it. Amen? The interesting thing about this word moed is that it also comes from a word ya'ad, which means to fix something, to betroth, to espouse, to point something out before it ever arrives. But listen to this. It carries with it the idea of one who is being summoned to court in order to plead or to litigate. And so if you understand that, then the tabernacle of his presence in the wilderness, the tabernacle of his presence as the pattern for us today, becomes a place of litigation. Isaiah 43:26 says, Abba speaking in the first person to you, he says, come and let us plead together. The English mindset is this: I'm pleading, I'm begging. The word behind it in the Hebrew language, shafat, is a word that means litigate. You come before me and let us litigate together. The word here for together comes from a root that means unity, to be in unison, to be of the same mind, to be on the same page. How can I come and expect to litigate anything that regards me as an individual or my family or my future if I'm not on the same page that he is? When he says, come and let us litigate together, he then finishes it by speaking to you and saying, declare. And that word declare in the Hebrew language, safa, comes from a root word that actually indicates to press and to form something, just as if you were printing it out and pressing it into being. He says, declare thou that thou mayest be justified. And that word justified is the Hebrew word zadik. Are you hearing what I'm sharing this afternoon? Something about this place, Vayiqra, that Abba is speaking from, the Ma'ochel Moed, the tent of litigation, is something that should be so, we should have our attention so focused on it that we understand that in the days in front of us, we're going to have to seek out this place or this sanctuary in order to have a rightful cause in front of the court of the world, so that we can litigate according to what Abba's already written in the stellar luminaries and witnessed in the earth in the form of his word, and we can stand in front of the court of the world and say, thus saith Yahweh, and then be vindicated because his word and I are one. Are you hearing me? There's something about understanding these holy convocations and the place and time to meet at when these holy convocations occur. In fact, if you understand Ma'ochel Moad, you'll know that it's given you a fixed and predetermined forthcoming timing for us to expect the manifestation not only of the Creator, but for him to manifest himself in the final tabernacle that will be his dwelling place in the earth. I don't know if y'all can understand that. And so when I begin to look at what's happening here in Vayiqra, it seems that Yahweh is using this physical wilderness tabernacle. He's speaking to Israel in the present tense there, who were actually present at that particular season, but he's also reminding you and I in the future, if we are Yisrael, those that stand up right in front of him, he's reminding us that just as surely as he once spoke with them precisely, listen to that word precisely. There was no ambiguity to that. It wasn't that he was scratching his head and just throwing, it was a very precise word regarding who they were as individuals and what he expected of them and what he expected of the generations that were inside them. And not only is he speaking to them and reminding us here in the future regarding what he said to that group who was present in that day, he's actually giving us an example of a rehearsal that was going on a daily basis in front of the children of Israel. Listen, that book wasn't written for that present generation. That book was written for you and I to remind us that he has been rehearsing this for hundreds of years, for generations, and it's now being revealed and played out in front of us. And what we're doing, we are actually witnessing a rehearsal of a future appointed time when just as surely as Yahweh is speaking to Moshe here in this parsha, he's speaking to Moshe from out of a skin tabernacle here in Vayiqra. And he's speaking into the future regarding one who would come, because this shadow picture of this skin tent that is going to be following Israel throughout the wilderness, it is a picture of the I am that I am, the one who was and who is to come. It is a shadow picture of this individual that is going to take on a fleshly body and manifest him. That's what they were looking forward to. You understand? And that he is going to, of necessity, have to occupy a skin tent of flesh just like Adam did, and that this individual who is going to come, that he would also speak to a future Israel. And as he's speaking to them, just as is occurring here in Vayiqra, he's going to once again summons the bride before the world in order to lawfully espouse her. You need to understand what's happening here. This is all courtroom language. All of this is a precedent that has been set in the courtroom of creation. And if you don't understand precedent in law, you are going to miss what Abba has planned for you and the benefits that he's allowing you in regard to your inheritance that's coming. If you can cite precedent, no court can ever overrule a precedent that has been established in law. But you have to know that precedent. From what I just gave you with those definitions, it also is extremely apparent. If there's a need, let me just ask you this. Why would I need to learn how to litigate? I'm not here to argue a case with Yahweh. All he's telling me, okay, come in here in the courtroom, come before me and let's litigate your case. Well, it leads me to believe that there's someone who's here trying to prosecute me. Are you listening? And so you can deduce that there's going to be an expected legal, not lawful, argument that's going to be presented in the days ahead from the time that this is being written regarding Moshe and the children of Israel at Mount Sinai, it's letting them know that in the days ahead there's going to be a legal argument, not a lawful argument. There's a difference between legal and lawful. Just because it's legal doesn't make it right. You hear me? There's going to be a legal argument presented that's going to question the role of this one who's going to come in the skin tent known as the last Adam. It's going to question whether or not he was, in fact, the groom that was presented to Israel at Mount Sinai. And not only is it going to question his legitimacy, the validity of his role as king and priest in the earth and the right for him to access the bride, it's also going to call into question who the bride would be at that particular time as well. Okay? Now you also need to understand if that occurred in Moshe's day at Mount Sinai, several hundred years later, at the coming of our Messiah, Yeshua, then we can also expect it in the days in front of us. If we are expecting our husband to appear, you should also expect his validity, his right as the husband of the earth, the king priest of the earth, the king priest who is going to espouse a bride. You should also expect that role to be questioned. And if you question that role, then you're also going to have to make a decision between who is the rightful bride and who is not. There are a lot of people out there that say that they believe in the Torah, but they're looking at a different bride than what you and I are. Listen to me. This is important. I want you to remember the model of the tabernacle. The tabernacle was designed in the form of the man. That tabernacle was a skin tent. It was to represent that first Adam, but it was also to represent one who was without sin that was to come, the last Adam. Are you listening to me? That tabernacle was just not supposed to be standing there in the wilderness, idle and alone and celibate as a man. That tabernacle was to follow in the same role that Adam did in Genesis chapter 1, 26 through 28, and be fruitful and multiply, replenish, subdue, and have dominion in the earth. And so he was supposed to have an intimate relationship with Israel, and Israel was the bride. And so every time Israel came in contact at appointed times at a designated place called the tabernacle, it was a mirror image of the relationship that Adam and Eve had before their fall. Are you hearing this? It was a shadow picture of their naked and not ashamed condition prior to the fall. Listen to me. Adam and Chava, Adam and Isha, were actually created to speak offspring into existence. They were never predetermined prior to the fall. They were never determined to have a physical pregnancy where you see the woman having to endure suffering and going through all the kinds of things that she has to go through today in order to produce a living child, or living son, excuse me. They were supposed to be able to speak things into existence, and their offspring would have been born into the world. Are you listening? And so this was what was supposed to happen with the shadow picture of this tent and the intimate relationship with the nation of Israel. But you know the fall. You understand what happens. And just as surely as this pattern is being revealed again here at Mount Sinai, you also understand that there is another incident called the golden calf incident. And the golden calf incident, go back and follow that. We don't have time to get into it. Brittany talked about it a little bit last week about Numbers chapter 5, the bitter waters of jealousy. The bitter waters of jealousy were offered to the children of Israel, those that succumbed to a relationship, if you will, with that golden calf, and you find out that several thousand of them died in the process. After the fall, listen to me carefully. After the fall, the bitter waters of the golden calf and the relationship that Israel had then could never produce live sons again. It could only produce a dead generation. Are you hearing me? A dead generation, remember we've been talking about courtroom language. A dead generation is without remedy in the court of law unless a living heir can be found. And if we don't know that we are a living man or a living woman, a living generation, listen to me, you have no remedy. You can do what Isaiah 43 says, and you can say, I'm going to go into the courtroom and I'm going to declare thou that they missed, that I might be justified. If you are not convinced that you are a living man or woman, you can never win an argument in front of a prosecutor that knows that you are a dead entity. Y'all listening to me? Bitter waters. The bitter waters of jealousy, Numbers chapter 5, the bitter waters that were offered to the children of Israel that they were forced to drink there at the golden calf incident, they represent being lost at sea. And it's interesting, from Genesis chapter 3 forward, and again at the golden calf incident, and again when Yeshua is executed, Yahweh sets in motion a living trust. A living trust until Adam, Israel, can live again. And you can see this in the example of our Messiah 2,000 years ago. And if you understand anything that I'm talking about as it regards the seat, admiralty law, and if you could see, there was a couple of the flags in this house that we always set aside for one reason, and it's because they have gold fringe and some things atop of them. And those gold fringes always represent admiralty law. Every court in this nation operates under admiralty law, the law of the sea. Are you hearing me? The enemy understands that. If you don't understand that and you submit yourself to the law of the sea, you are a walking dead man. And so Yeshua, what did he do? What has he found? Every time you go and look at the instance throughout Torah, you'll find that those individuals that were living, they walked either through the Red Sea, through the Jordan, or did like he did, walked upon the seas of Galilee, walked above the waters, and were not controlled by the sea. While Yeshua is demonstrating the fact that he is the living Adam, there was a corporate Edomite Roman Levitical system that had been established for one purpose, in anticipation of the coming of the Son of Man, so that they could carry him into the courtroom of creation, just like I've been telling you, and litigate against him and see that his inheritance and his generations coming after him would be denied what was rightfully theirs. That condition has not changed, and that's the current condition that everybody that is, quote unquote, in this earth today are in. Listen to me, you don't need to be a sucker. That's in my notes. Don't be a sucker and listen to the lies of the enemy. The enemy, just like in Genesis chapter 3, has inserted himself into the equation. It happened there the first time. It happened again at the coming of our Messiah, Yeshua, and it's going to happen again in the days in front of us. Listen, you're going to be carried into the courtroom of the world, and you're going to have to be able to litigate according to the lawful terms of Yahweh's word, and if you don't understand what that is, you're going to miss out. Say amen. Now, just as surely as his rightful place as the groom is going to be called into question in the coming days, I'm going to prove to you right now as we speak, I can prove it, and I'm going to prove to you that it's going to happen in the days in front of us. His validity, his role as king and priest and husband of the bride is going to be called into question, as is going to be the role of the bride. There is going to be a counterfeit harlot bride who's going to be clothed in scarlet and presented before the world as the quote-unquote bride of the Messiah. You better understand that it will not be the Messiah of Yeshua. There is also going to be another tabernacle that is in the process of being designed and built, a charismatic entity. and everybody's going to look at it, and it's as we speak, it's being designed to seduce the masses in order to present us from becoming living men. If you fall prey to this third temple that is going to be presented, you're going to find in the days that's in front of you, it's going to compromise your standing in the earth as one who's entitled to the inheritance of the promised land, and you're going to be literally nothing less. When Yahweh tells you to come out of her, my people, you cannot come out and submit to that. I want to look back at that word moed. It regulates the timing. Pay attention to that. Yahweh Vayiqra. Yahweh was speaking, but he was speaking at a specific time. He was not only speaking at a specific place, he was speaking at a specific time. And if you understand, when he speaks, as I shared with you earlier, when Adam and Eve were initially created, they were designed to speak things into existence to produce sons according to the Adamic edict in Genesis chapter 1, 26 through 28. And so when you find Yahweh speaking here in this Torah portion, every time he's speaking, he is seeding his bride. And he is seeding, it's an intimate situation where the two should be naked and not ashamed, and proper timing, listen to me, proper timing is crucial to producing life. Every husband and wife who are attempting to get pregnant and understands anything at all about reproduction, and I'm trying to be as careful as I can, every one of us knows that proper timing is important. I need to understand the proper time that my wife is ovulating, and I also need to understand that when we come together at the proper time and seed is released, that's when living sons are produced. That's what this term moed indicates. It's the optimum time when I am, as the bride, I am at my most fruitful condition. The optimum time for me to be able to receive seed. The enemy knows that. That's why Isaiah 14 says that Lucifer says, I'm going to ascend unto the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. Why? Because he understood the power of the Moedim, and if he could get you to assemble at these Moedim, and you're not understanding who is speaking to you, you'll receive the wrong seed. Listen, it's important. I believe for us to understand what I'm sharing with you is imperative. It's actually a matter of life and death. The single most controversial thing that has ever been presented to the believing community is this third temple that is being touted as we speak. It's being presented as the future Ma'ohel Moed. It's being presented as the place in the future where Elohim will speak seed into his people. Are you hearing me? The only thing that they're waiting for now is the moed, the timing. And all of this is in addition to who their choice for the bride is supposedly going to be. And if what I'm telling you is the truth, then that counterfeit that I've just presented to you must of necessity have a genuine twin that it's being modeled after. And that genuine twin is patterned after the pattern in the heavens, that pattern called a tabnith. And so what we need to understand, if this is the case, we need to know where and when can we expect the manifestation of the tabernacle of his presence. And we also need to understand who is speaking to us, what kind of urge on the inside of us is calling us out of the nations, what is driving us and compelling us to come together as a company of believers. And we need to understand just as surely that the counterfeit is speaking as well. The first time you see this word moed used is in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, moed, and for days and years." There is a connection between that phrase, lights in the firmament, and this word moed, which regulates the timing of Yahweh's family planning. This Torah portion, Vayiqra, is all about a family planning clinic. It's teaching you how to be intimate with your husband. It's teaching you when to be intimate with your husband and how to conduct yourselves at the same time. If you understand these words that were first framed in Genesis 1 through 14, it'll help you to understand the future time and place where you need to be gathered to, where you can receive seed and be made alive. And I'm telling you that the same sources that have been speaking from the inception of creation in the heavens and were witnessed to in the earth, and as Abba's word is written down, they're still speaking. And I contend that these lights in the firmament of the heavens will not only reveal who the groom is, but it will reveal who the tabernacle of his presence is, where it's going to be located, and who his bride is. And Revelation 22:17 says, "The Spirit and the bride say, 'Come.'" Look at this word for lights. It's the plural of the word ma'or, and it's taken from the root that means, of course, to shine, to become light or fire. But that word ma'or has a numeric value. This is mind-staggering. These things are just not casually thrown there for us to just, pick them up and add them for filler material. The numeric value of ma'or is 247. It's the same as the word mazor, which is the root of the word mazorot. Ot meaning a sign. Mazorot is a Hebrew rendering of the phrase zodiacal, or signs of the constellations, the zodiac, if you will. And so I had to ask you, based on that, is it possible that the original voice first spoke from, now we're talking about Yahweh speaking here from the tabernacle of his presence in Leviticus, am I right? But is it possible that the original verse first spoke from the tabernacle in the heavens, after which this earthly tabernacle in the wilderness was patterned from, and that pattern is going to give us the future pattern of what we can expect the tabernacle to look like? And I believe it is exactly that. Pay attention to the word play here. "And said Elohim," Vayomer Elohim. Look at the root of that phrase, "and said." It's the word amar. Amar means to speak or to say. It's different from the word dabar, which we usually see defined as to speak or to say. Dabar means a specific word, an entire message, while amar tends to reflect simply or generally the act of speaking. And so we can conclude that the word dabar of Elohim later became the Word made flesh. Did you see that? The Word made flesh, which is typified in this wilderness skin tent. It was that skin tent that was given an image, a body, and it's the same body that was prophesied of before the foundation of the world and found encapsulated in or embodied in these original lights in the stellar heavens. The lights in the stellar heavens were prophesying. They became the Amar, which is the general act of speaking. They were speaking into creation even before the image was made manifest. Do you see that? It's called calling those things that be not before they were. That's what faith is. Okay? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It was the Amar, the things that had been written overwhelmingly in the stellar luminaries that prophesied of the man that was to come. Okay? It's interesting because if you look at that word Amar, to speak, it has the same root letters as the word Ma'or, the lights. I don't think it's an accident. The lights, Ma'or, embodied the spoken words Amar of Elohim. And if you look at the summarized message, the Amar of Yahweh, that is written in the zodiacal heavens, it reveals a concise image. And that concise image is one of the man who would become the tabernacle man in the earth and would sit on the throne embodying the sanctuary of Elohim. But at the same time that Moshe was given that pattern of a tabernacle man, after which they designed the wilderness tabernacle, he was also given some intricate details and more exacting, if you will, blueprint, which helped him to understand how to construct the tabernacle. He was given more than just a picture. The stellar luminaries gave us a concise picture, but it also gave us intricate details on the workings, the inner workings, and the entire salvific redemption plan of that tabernacle man. Do you see that? The word for pattern is the word tabnit, and it comes from a word that does mean pattern, likeness, form, or similitude, but it's taken from the Hebrew word banah, ta-banah. Tav means a third-person future tense. You shall, you will. And so when you see the pattern, it's saying you shall, you will. You shall or you will do what? Banah. When he was showing that pattern to Moshe, he's telling Moshe, when you see this pattern, you as an individual, you corporately as a body, and it's specifically speaking of the Messiah who was the epitomized you in the earth. You will become, you will banah. What does banah mean? You will build, erect, or construct, and it implies to begin to build as in building a family name. Do y'all see that? And so when you see that pattern, it's all about the intimacy that's planned before the foundation of the world of Yahweh with his bride at these divine occasions, at these set-apart Moedim. And there's some other parallels. Look at that word Vayiqra. It's the title of our parsha. The root letters of Vayiqra also give us the same letters as the word for firmament, rakia. It's only spelled or styled, if you will, with the letter ayin instead of the aleph. Both are silent letters and they're interchangeable. And so what Yahweh did, he Vayiqra in the rakia, and he amarred in the moed. Are y'all seeing the wordplay here? And if you understand what rakia means this is the Vayiqra in the rakia. And so when you Vayiqra, you have seeded something in the stellar heavens. Well, the word for rakia means to hammer it out and to beat it out, like I would take a chisel, if you will, and tap the letters and embed the letters. When we used to weld years ago, they would give us a little hammer and a chisel with some letters on it that would identify the specific weld that we were doing as our own. And when I would finish the weld, I would tap it, and when they came behind, they would know that that weld was mine. Okay? And so what Yahweh does, he is Vayiqra into the rakia. He amarred in the moed. He literally embedded his word. He styled his word, his plan. Not only did he style his word and his plan, but when you see the overarching plan of Yahweh's word, you can see it condensing, coming together, and forming a man that would become the Word made flesh in the stellar luminaries. It's just mind-stackering. It's mind-stackering. When you see Yahweh turning around and it says, and he said, Genesis 1:14, and he said, let there be lights in the firmament. You could actually take that because rakia and Vayiqra can be interchangeable. Amar and moed can be interchangeable. It could literally say this, Elohim, instead of saying, let there be lights in the firmament, you literally could say this, Elohim is speaking light, and that speaking light became words. And the speaking light that became words became the man. And so when I looked in the stellar luminaries, I'm seeing the living man who became the embodiment patterned in the wilderness tabernacle. And I'm also seeing a shadow picture of the living man that's being raised up right now as we speak. You realize what's happening? As the outcasts are being gathered, we have lost the understanding of the message written in the stellar luminaries. It's like there's an olive, there's a bait, there's a gamel, there's a dalet. You're an olive, you're a bait, gamel, dalet. You start looking at all these different letters that represent a being, part of the DNA of Yahweh that has been, hear this, disseminated, seeded into the world to protect us. And as Yahweh's gathering those from the four corners of the world, He's taken the aleph and tav, the general Omar, the general message that was seeded into the heavens. He's taken all of these individuals' letters and He's beginning to take us and put us together. And all of those stylized letters become a man walking in the earth. That ought to make you want to shout. That ought to make you want to shout. You don't know who you are. We don't know who we are if we understand who we are and what we've been called to be. When Yahweh seeded Himself into the earth, He made a plan. Even before Adam fell, He knew what was going to happen. And so not only did He seed Himself, He killed His Son so that His Son, who would have no sin, would then turn around and be able to resurrect all of those fallen ones and present a living man in the last days, that the earth, listen to me, the powers that be, they don't understand it. They may not like it. They may not recognize it. But I'm telling you, in the days in front of us, you are going to be a collective force that will have to be reckoned with. Come, let's plead together. Hallelujah. Based on that, I strongly contend, I will argue this until I cease to be nothing but a vapored memory. I contend that Yahweh is only going to speak from one place and one system. And that place, listen to me carefully, I don't care about the best laid plans of mice and men. Yahweh is going to speak from a place or a system that is going to be housed in the tabernacle or body that He is going to designate. They can put their name on an edifice or a building, a stonework made with man's hands, and call this the tabernacle of Elohim. And if Yahweh has not designated it so, it is nothing but a whited sepulchre full of dead men's bones. And if we can understand that He's going to speak from a specific location and a specific tabernacle, then we also need to understand that if there's a tabernacle, there needs to be a mediator in the earth, a priestly system with a redemptive agent of some sort. And you need to also remember that without the shedding of blood, there is no redemptive agent. Are you following me? Without the shedding of blood, there's no redemption from sin. Am I right? And so we have to understand that there is going to be a priestly system in the days in front of us that is going to be charged with mediating between Elohim and Israel from the location that only the divine oracle is going to speak from. At present, in my opinion, we only have two viable choices. There are a lot of others that are trying to jockey for position, but they're not viable. There's only two. Number one is the Melchizedek priesthood, who I believe has been foreordained before the foundation of the world to serve as a mediator between Yahweh and the rest of the earth. Number two is the Levitical system. If we can understand the purpose of each of those two, then guess what? If you understand those two entities and their purpose, then you can, in my opinion, unequivocally establish the third temple's place in the future in conjunction with that of the temple or tabernacle not made with hands. And you won't be seduced. Are you listening to me? Let me just drop this in, kind of a parenthetical thing. Maybe this will help you to determine what you're looking at right now across the earth. In fact, Passover's coming up, and I'm telling you, as Pesach arrives, this is going to be a very hot topic in the land. The sacrificial system's being reinstituted. We're going to devote an altar. We're going to create a place. We're going to build the third temple. The Temple Institute is rapidly pushing this. And listen to me, I'm not trying to lamb-blast anybody. I'm just doing my best to tell you the truth so that you won't be seduced. Recent statistics tell us that the vast majority of Israel has been vaccinated. In fact, Israel is the leading nation regarding the percentage of population that's been inoculated. At the writing of these notes, there was a law, and since then, they are kind of backing off a little bit because they've received a lot of pressure, but they're going to do this. There's a law in front of the Knesset that is being pushed to imprison anyone who's guilty of speaking about Yeshua or Jesus as the Mashiach. So that should tell you that if the third temple was built tomorrow, first of all, if you haven't been inoculated, you're a pureblood and you could not get in. Second of all, Yeshua is not even welcome in the country at present because if you even speak of him, it's under the threat of their law. And not only would he not be welcome in the country, he is not welcome in their temple. So you do the math. For whom do you suppose this third temple is being built? Oh, well, there'll be a great revival through the land, and they'll acknowledge it, and then all this is going to happen, and they'll change, and they'll recognize they won the one whom they pierced. By the time that happens, honey, there's a koshering process that's going to take place in the land. I want you to just look at something with me. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 11 through 12. And this is one of the reasons that the book of Hebrews is so vilified. There's some that have wanted to throw the book of Hebrews out because the book of Hebrews talks about the Melchizedek priestly system. But Messiah became an high priest of good things to come by a greater and more perfect tabernacle. Oh, what could be greater and more perfect? One not made with hands. It's made clear, right? That is to say, not of this building. Why do you think that he would say that, not of this building? Don't you think that that was probably where he either had been writing about another letter, about a specific building at that time? He might have even been standing close by pointing at it saying, not of this building. Neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. It is my opinion that you cannot argue that the original eternal Melchizedek order was set into motion. Remember, there has to be a mediator and a redemptive agent. I believe that the Melchizedek order was a mediator in the earth in the person of the first Adam, and that was passed from the fall all the way down to Melchizedek, from Melchizedek to Abraham, and on down to the Messiah Yeshua. I'm convinced that it was set in motion, according to Revelation 13, before the foundation of the world by the shedding of the blood of the Lamb. And it was brought to fruition upon his execution and subsequent resurrection. I want you to just, I have here in my notes, let's get just a little bit. I want you to tiptoe close to the edge. This is real slippery here, okay? It's just real slippery, and I want you to get this. The Melchizedek zodiacal firmament connection. There's very few that could argue the existence of the Melchizedek order, in particular as it's named after the figure that's depicted in Genesis chapter 14, verse 18. How many of you remember that? When you see him mentioned, it's after Abraham is returning from the slaughter of the kings. Now that's important because if you go back and look at it, Melchizedek comes out with an offering and presents an offering in front of Abraham, to Abraham, calls on the one that can, by whom the creation was sworn into existence, to sanctify the offering And whatever's being transferred, if you will, in this meeting between Melchizedek and Abraham. The King James English says that Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek. I'm convinced that it's actually the reverse of that Melchizedek tithed into the priesthood of Abraham because there was a transfer that took place there. What was the purpose of that transfer? You have to do the research and back up to a couple of chapters before that, and you see that there is a promise being made to Abraham regarding a promised seed that is going to come. Where did that promised seed come from? It came from the Vayiqra of Yahweh, who seeded into Abraham. What did he seed into Abraham? He seeded into Abraham the seed, according to Galatians. Not of seed as in many, but seed as in one. Talking about our Messiah, Yeshua. And so the Melchizedek encounter comes on the heels. Listen to me. It comes on the heels of the promise to Abraham that he's going to be fruitful and multiply and replenish, subdue, and have dominion. That was the original Melchizedek edict into the earth. Genesis 1:26 through 28. Amen? Now, most people dispute the validity of the Melchizedek order, in particular as it's juxtaposed today across from the Levitical priestly system. But I'm convinced that the entire salvific redemption message was written in the stellar luminaries of the Ma'or by the Amar of Yahweh. Speaking of Elohim and revealing how his message in the luminaries is reflecting one who would come as both king and priest. And if he's prophesying that there is one who would come as both king and priest, we ought to be able to look into the stellar luminaries and see a confirmation of that. Am I right? Don't you argue with me, Miss Jean. She's actually over there. She can't hardly sit down. The proof is there. I'm telling you, I've been studying this for 40-something years, and I saw this week, and I thought, oh, my goodness. At the very moment when the Messiah was introduced into the earth in the skin tent of the Adam as the Melchizedek king and priest, who would become not only the mediator, but he would become the redemptive agent, because he would have to shed his own blood, because there was no other sacrificial agent that was capable of the redemption of fallen man. At the very moment that he's being introduced into the earth, around 4 to 7 BC, before the Common Era, during the festival of Sukkot, Sukkot is the season when the husband and bride come together into intimate place. It's the sukkah. It's where the Vayiqra, the seed, is released into the bride at that particular seed. That's the whole purpose of Sukkot. At the moment that was taking place, there is a conjunction, and this is validated by all of the astronomers today. There was a conjunction of two of the largest planets in our solar system, and that's where we get the quote-unquote star of Bethlehem. The first star is the star known as the king planet, Jupiter, the king. Jupiter in Hebrew is known as Zedek. And so there you have the Melchizedek, who is one of those stars that's conjoined together. Are you hearing what I'm trying to share? The other star at that same particular time was the star known as Saturn. And Saturn, everybody has tried to associate Saturn with the enemy. And I'm telling you, the Greco-Roman world has tried to compromise everything that's in the luminary, so that's just hogwash. How many of you ever washed a hog? I've washed a few hogs, and it's just a thankless task to begin with, and it doesn't usually accomplish much. Are you hearing me? Saturn comes from the Hebrew word Shabtai, from which we get Shabbat. The root of Shabbat is Sheva. Sheva means to seven oneself, to covenant, or to swear. Wait just a second. You realize what was happening? The moment that the wise men saw this quote-unquote conjunction in the heavens. They saw a picture of the Melchizedek conjoined with a swearing in the heavens. In other words, in the heavens there is a swearing that there is one who is going to be a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek that's being born into the earth. And that was fulfilling Psalm 110, verse 4. And that luminary's miraculous sign was announcing the nativity of our Messiah, Yeshua. Are you hearing me? This is powerful because Yahweh's trying to teach us something. Skip that next slide, and for time's sake, let's go on down to the next one. I believe we've got to tread very carefully here, because if what we surmise is true, in the future Elohim is once again going to Vayiqra, speak to Israel out of his tabernacle at an appointed Moedim. You believe that? The sole purpose for Yahweh speaking out of a future tabernacle to his sons in a future season is to produce just that, living sons, to be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, and have dominion. And if that's the case, you and I need to be expecting the enemy to attempt to counterfeit and produce an identical twin in order to seduce the masses into the wrong camp. Are y'all still following me? As we speak, remember we were talking about the Melchizedek order and the Levitical order. These two systems contrast greatly in their respective redemptive mechanisms. Both of them have blood as the redemptive agent. Are you following me? One is the blood of the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world, our Messiah Yeshua, the last Adam, the only living man that ever was birthed into the earth without sin. The other involves the shedding of animal blood. Listen to me. The shedding of animal blood can never atone for man. It only sets aside, and this is just surely the grace of Yahweh. I'm grateful that he did that, but the purpose of the sacrificial animals being slaughtered in the wilderness was so that by faith you can acknowledge that and apply it, and it would only set aside the judgment until a future date. Death was still moving. Sin and death still had its existence control. Are y'all with me? And so what future date are we talking about? If animal blood can never fully atone for sin and only postpone judgment until the coming of Yeshua, then I submit to you that Yeshua cannot ever submit himself underneath a Levitical order, else animal sacrifice once again becomes the go-to method for redemption. It's an exercise in futility, and Yeshua, who himself is after the order of Melchizedek, he has to, of necessity, implement a higher atonement, the blood of his sacrifice. And if you don't understand that, stop with me and look at Psalm 110, verse 4. Are y'all getting any of this? I'm going to try and speed up because my time's getting short. And so if I get a glazed look from you, then you go back and listen to this again and get the notes. Psalm 110, verse 4. Yahweh has sworn and will not repent. You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Let me just clarify something. First of all, this is a sworn statement. I have sworn. Yahweh says that, and because there was no other greater than him, he swears by himself, okay? The word for sworn him is from the root of the word Shavah. Again, the same root as Sabbath, and it means to seven oneself, to adjure, to cut an oath. It's interesting because it's insinuating that as he's swearing regarding the Melchizedek order, that it's also connected somehow to the cyclical seventh day of the week known as the Sabbath, and that the Sabbath becomes an exclamation point at the end of his swearing. Every time you celebrate the Sabbath, it's an exclamation point of Yahweh's word, sealing that oath upon creation for a specific purpose. Every time you celebrate the Sabbath, you need to ask yourself, why are we here? Why am I here? The Sabbath was instituted in Genesis chapter 2, immediately after the command was given to Adam and Eve to be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, and have dominion, the Sabbath was set aside as the day for intimacy to occur between Adam and Eve so that they could stand up in the courtroom of Yahweh and declare themselves, litigate with him, and see that their word would come to pass and fruition and manifest in the earth. That's why the Sabbath is important. Now listen to me. We're talking about Yahweh swearing here. And if you research the Tanakh, there are a lot of different places where Yahweh is found swearing. But in every case, except this one right here, according to most scholars, in every case, whenever Yahweh is swearing, it's always in connection with his promise to Abraham regarding his perpetual seed line that would produce promised seed or promised son. Again, that includes Genesis chapter 2, verse 3, where the Sabbath becomes that venue or that appointment that was forever established for intimacy between Adam and his bride, or Messiah and his bride, okay? And so the Sabbath has been established as the place and time to produce sons, and not just the Sabbath, but in particular the Sabbath, as well as the other holy convocations. They are set aside by Yahweh as the place for intimacy between he and his bride, so that you could produce sons in the image of Elohim. And so you can't separate the Sabbath from the Melchizedek order. And it's not an accident, as I said earlier, that the first time you see the Melchizedek is right on the heels of Abraham being told to be fruitful and multiply, and that his seed's going to fill up the earth. And now you fast forward to this event in Psalm 110 where Yahweh is swearing regarding the Melchizedek order. And so Psalm 110 verse 4 almost seems as if it's out of place if you don't understand who's being sworn about. In fact, if you look at it, most scholars say it's not connected to the promise to Abraham. It's just simply connected to the Melchizedek order. But if you understand it, Adam was intended to be the first king, priest, and then by that he would become a vehicle through whom or through which or by which the Melchizedek priesthood would continue throughout the generations. Then you'd see that the plan of redemption had been set in motion by the Lamb being slain before the foundation of the world, long before Adam ever fell. Does that make sense to y'all? It's getting quiet. Are y'all getting any of it? So it indicates that Adam's fall had been accounted for before Adam ever fell. And based on that, if Yahweh says the Lamb is going to be slain before the foundation of the world, you're literally being told that no DNA from the fallen seed line could ever be attributed to the Lamb who was going to come as the last Adam. In other words, like Melchizedek had no determined lineage, no father, no mother, no beginning, and no end, the Lamb who was coming, our Messiah, Yeshua, could not be connected to the first Adam's lineage, and so therefore he would have no beginning in Adam, no end in Adam, no mother in Adam, and no father in Adam. And so Yeshua became the I am that I am, the one who was and is to come, and he is the only one that could be able to be standing in the office of the Melchizedek king and priest. That's why Psalm 110 verse 4 has this sworn statement. It connects us to the promise of the Shabbat and the promise of a perpetual seed line. Listen to me. Every time you celebrate the Shabbat, it's a reminder that the seed line who is being gathered, the living ones that are being gathered to celebrate the Shabbat, that we could only be credited to the paternity. If a paternity suit was called for, the only entity who could be determined as our father is the Elohim of creation, and that son is the only candidate that's possible for the priesthood as we speak. That ought to blow your mind. As a sworn statement, Shepherd John studied a lot of these things that I'm sharing with you today. Just like the Sabbath, a sworn statement can never be amended, retracted, or abolished. Once you do that, the credibility and the immutability of the one who initially swore is called into question, and now what he has done, he has just committed perjury. And if anything Yahweh has sworn to changes, it automatically invalidates everything that was ever spoken Vayiqra into the earth. And so I submit to you that the priesthood that belongs to Yeshua has been established forever after the order of the Melchizedek. Listen to this right. Listen to these next couple of definitions. After the order. Look at the word after. A little small, innocuous word, two-letter word, ayin lamed. But it's actually a powerful legal term. It's translated as upon. You are a high priest after, following after, like, upon, likened unto. But it also connotes on the grounds of, according to, on account of. It comes from a word that means the top or the highest, the most high. And then you have the word dibra for order. And it's indicating speech as well as, listen to me, a suit or a cause regarding an estate. That just blows my mind. Do you realize what's happening? When Psalm 110 verse 4 is released into creation, it's actually in the courtroom of creation, and I believe it's probably about the time that Satan was walking among the sons of Yahweh, and Yahweh's calling him into question, and he was probably bringing an accusation about the validity of one who would come that would stand in that Melchizedek order and have the right to redeem fallen mankind, which now were under the auspices of Hasatan. Listen to me. After, that word ayin lamed is a legal term for on the grounds of. Listen to this. On the grounds of means there is reason sufficient in law to justify a relief. Relief is that which is enforcing someone's right. It is an order or a dibra that becomes a judgment in a suit or a cause in the court that's presented before a righteous judge that proves beyond a doubt who the Melchizedek priest is, and it is Yeshua. That statement, sworn by the Creator, was a righteous judgment for relief regarding the inheritance of the Melchizedek king and priest. It had been set aside until one came in the flesh that could say, I'm alive, and a judgment was rendered on not only on his behalf, but of all of those other living men that would come out of his loins. Woo! This individual is forever set into this office. It's the highest office achievable because the word is rendered here as a judicial decision that's uttered as a final determination in a lawsuit. Listen to me. I believe that this was probably Hasatan that was bringing this suit. And I believe that once he brought this suit into the courtroom of creation, Yahweh looks at it, and we're litigating together to determine if he is the Zaddik. It was a lawful suit that was brought against the estate belonging to the Melchizedek. And Yeshua is the only lawful heir to this estate. He is the I am. He is first in time, first in line. No other has a higher system. No other has a higher right. He is the one that has willfully submitted to the King of creation. Now listen to me. If he comes, and he is going to appear again in the days ahead, but those of us that are representing the Melchizedek priesthood, we are literally taking on him, and so we're representing him. Are you listening to me? We are supposed to litigate together. We're to be in unison as one, just like he is. Are you listening? And so if we submit to any other system, what we are doing is that we are willfully committing a rebellious act, and a straw man is then created. A straw man is a dead entity. Just like the Levitical order who oversees the estate because the Adam is considered dead. If Yeshua submits to the Levitical order, Yeshua once again represents a dead man, a dead system. Are you hearing me? The same can be said of that wilderness generation. Listen to me. The wilderness generation after the golden calf incident had no access. They were not living men any longer. They were a dead generation. A straw man had to be created to act in their behalf until such time as one could come as a living man and say, I'm alive. Come on now. And so when Yeshua arrives on the scene, what Yeshua does, he took ownership of the straw man and he opened up the door for his name's sake. You realize what that means? He opened up the door for his inheritance to be accessed by all of those that could prove in a court, not only in the courtroom of heaven, that's one thing, but you better be able to prove it in the court of the earth. You need to be able to prove that I am a living man, Son of the Most High. Hallelujah. Woo! Y'all hold on. We're supposed to get better. Let's look at this straw man in the wilderness. If you remember, Brittany was talking about the book of Exodus. She finished up that last portion. We're in the first portion of the book of Leviticus. Leviticus, ironically, falls right in the middle of, you have Genesis, Exodus, Vayiqra, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. We're right in the middle. You have to ask, why are we stuck in the middle? What purpose does it play? Why is Vayiqra so important that it's bookended by all of these other words from Yahweh in the Torah? Can you ask that question? It's interesting because Israel is brought here at Mount Sinai. The wilderness tabernacle has been designed and completed. And Israel is supposed to be ready to begin their journey as living men into the promised land and to access their inheritance. Am I right? You know the story. If you go back and look at it, the first step away from Mount Sinai, it's not until 9 chapters, the whole book of Leviticus, they are not moving. It's 9 chapters into the book of Numbers before they ever move. And it's interesting because what you find now, it's like Yahweh puts everything on hold and puts a book called Vayiqra, which is a parenthetical book. And it spends all of this time with a comprehensive overview of the Levitical order and its sacrificial system. Neither the Levitical order nor the sacrificial system, which is supposed to be a remedy for the dead man, is able to allow Israel to function. I want you to listen to me. You remember when Yahweh first goes down to Egypt to deliver his son, and he tells Moshe to tell Pharaoh to let who go? Let my people go, my son go. And he tells Moshe that Israel was supposed to be a nation of kings and priests. Am I right? Well, the Levitical priesthood nor their sacrificial system will ever allow Israel to function as a kingdom or nation of priests. You can, under those two entities, you can only function as a straw man, a dead man. It's only under the auspices of the Melchizedek order that we can function as living men, because it is officiated by a living man. The other order is officiated by dead men. The Levitical order, this is what's amazing, the Levitical order became a hierarchical or class-conscious religious and political entity, and they are later, as we speak, even in Yeshua's day, they were conjoined together like conjoined twins. And they actually became a straw man, while a living trust had been created and set into motion after the golden calf incident, because Israel was considered dead, and therefore a dead man doesn't know how to handle his affairs, can't handle his affairs. Are you following me? And so the law of Moshe, the Torah, which everybody says the law has been done away with. If the law's done away with, we have no grantor of a trust and we have no trust custodian. The law becomes the grantor and the custodian of our estate as long as we're in the wilderness, because the blood of animals can never mitigate the death penalty. It can only postpone access to the promised land and all of the allodial title of everything that rightfully belongs to us until one could arrive on the scene that can prove he is not dead. That's why Yeshua makes the accusation to the Pharisees. You scribes and Pharisees, you're hypocrites. A hypocrite, go back and look at it. It's actually a Greek term that comes from the theater. It means one who's a masked man that acts. Yeah, he's an actor. For you are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but you're full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. This third temple is a dead sepulchre. And so the idea of a third temple as the dwelling place of Yahweh has to be examined. It plainly, underneath a system that has death working in it, the sacrificial system, the blood of bulls and goats is a dead system, death's working in it. And as long as it's part of that, it is part of a straw man entity, a dead entity. Are you listening to me? How, are you probably wanting to know? Without the presence of our Messiah recognized as a high priest after the order of Melchizedek, there remains no viable alternative to offset the death penalty. And because of that, you and I understand the temple will have no life in it. And so it cannot be the place if there's no life in it. If it's a dead body, listen to me, Yahweh is not going to speak out of a dead body. He speaks out of the living. Are you hearing me? In fact, if it's a dead entity, the law requires that the state has to put somebody in the place of a dead man to speak on his behalf, to take care of his affairs until someone in the lineage of the dead man is found alive, able to speak for him. Who's speaking for you? Yeshua, as the Son of Yahweh, became the only living man capable of speaking for all of Israel, and his blood alone atones for a born-again, living man opportunity. And I'm going to just say this. The state of Israel, the Judaic religion, the proposed reinstated Levitical priestly order, the temple faithful, the vast majority of the folks that are coming, that are going to embrace this coming system, will not welcome him. And so listen to me, if he is not welcome in this temple or tabernacle, and it has to have something living in it in order for it to be made alive, and Yahweh's not going to go into a dead entity. Listen to me. You need to realize what's about to happen. There has to, of necessity, be the appearance of another quote-unquote Messiah. And this quote-unquote Messiah is going to feign, he's going to pretend, he is going to be an actor. He's going to seem as if he has deity as the Son of Yahweh. He's going to be part iron and part clay, part man and part Nephilim, or part artificial intelligence. Listen to me. And he's going to feign that role, and he is going to sit on the throne that has been built for him, and he's going to attempt to speak for Yahweh. At the same time, he's going to attempt to change the times and the season. Why would he want to change the Moedim? Because he knows that Yahweh shows up at specific times, and Yahweh's bride, who's been espoused to him, shows up at specific times. And so he needs to change that, because he does not want to have a mano-a-mano, one-on-one facial encounter with Yahweh. So he's got to seduce you to appear at the wrong time, the wrong place. And what he's going to do, if he can affect the appointed times, those times are the specific season for optimum ovulation. If he can affect that, listen to me, if he can keep you from receiving seed from Yahweh when you're ready and ripe, if you'll allow, you will not produce living sons. But if he can get you to come into his place where you are ripe for receiving his seed, you'll receive dead seed and continue to reproduce dead sons. He says that. Isaiah 14:13, for you said in your heart, I will ascend into the heavens, I will exalt my throne above the stars of Yahweh. I will also sit upon the upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I got 5 minutes and 6 slides. The next highlighted word I've got phrase here for you is Ichabod returns. At present, there can be little argument, and this should be an indictment to serve to all of us. There can be little argument that the current religious community, whether it's Judaic, Christian, Hebrew roots, etc., that all of us are teetering on the brink of apostasy. This is the same condition found in the days of Eli and his son, Hophni and Phinehas. And it was his sons that flagrantly violated the Torah of Yahweh. That violation resulted in the loss of the Ark of the Covenant. I want you to understand what's happening here, because the third temple is not going to have an Ark of the Covenant in it. The quote-unquote second temple didn't have an Ark of the Covenant in it. I saw an email this week. It was sent out from Israel, and it was stating that we know where it's at. I submit to you, if they found it tomorrow, I don't care if Indiana Jones was there to extract it and bring it out and put it in front of them. I don't care if it was Vendel Jones. I don't care who it is. The presence of Elohim has departed from that, and he rests in the eternal Ark of the Covenant called Yod-He Vav-He, also known as Yeshua. That ark represented the seat, the throne room of intimacy where the husband resides. And see, here's where the Western mindset has got to be changed. The Western mindset, anything regarding intimacy inside the marriage is always on the bride. According to the Eastern mindset and the biblical concept, the focus was on the groom, on the husband. When the husband and bride get married, the husband comes out and the bride circles him 7 times. She's swearing herself to him. And if you go back and look at this Ark of the Covenant, it represented the husband in the tabernacle. And so when you see Ichabod, the spirit has departed, being declared, even the son was named as she's passing away, it's used to describe the absence of the glory that had been resident in that place. Absence of the glory also indicates his position and his standing. And I submit to you that in this particular instance, glory was a being. Glory that had departed was an entity. It was the manifest presence of Yahweh. And when the manifest presence of Yahweh left the temple or tabernacle of Yahweh, he took his presence, he took his standing, he took his eternal position, and he stepped outside of that and left them with what they wanted. Ichabod, usually translated as the glory has departed. Glory was the person of Yahweh. The Aleph Yod conjunction is a particle of negation. It means no or not. And so when you see Ichabod, it's actually saying no glory. There's no glory. And of course, you know where the root kabod, it comes from the word kavod, which is usually defined as honor or weightiness. And by the way, the numeric value of Ichabod is the same as the word for luz. Luz is the place where Jacob lays his head when he's having the dream, and it's also called Beit El, the house of Yahweh. And so kabod, the kavod, the weight, the glory, the splendor, is also the place where Yahweh dwells. It is literally the man himself, the tabernacle of Yahweh, and it embodies the ideal. We think about it as something weight and heavy, but it's actually an individual whose position, whose standing is weighty and heavy, just like a king who would enter into this place. Because of his standing in the earth, his presence becomes weighty and heavy. Okay? Kabod or kavod is traditionally limited to that above definition. but it hints at the weighty position of a tabernacle man, the husband, in particular, as he sits upon the throne of creative power, the source or origin of generational life. While the bride, Israel, comes to him at a specific time for optimum ovulation at the Moedim, and she comes at times that's designated for him to Vayiqra, to speak or release seed or life into her. In order to break the power of death from all of Israel and to restore the generational process that would give them access to their living trust, he has to be the one who speaks into the bride. From the creation forward, it has been the intent of Yahweh to produce sons in his image. And let me just share this with you. From a scientific perspective, the image of this man right here is my DNA. The image of Yahweh is his DNA. His word is his DNA. And if we're being admonished to come out of Babylon, it will entail a spiritual change that first of all begins in the DNA, and it will manifest itself in the natural by restoring life to the dead man. And let me remind you, the dead cannot speak for themselves. A dead man or corporate fiction, and if you fall into that category, you need to contact us and we can talk to you about it. Because a dead man cannot procreate or produce living sons, and neither the dead man nor anticipated generations has a destiny or a generational future and can never access the inheritance of Yahweh. That's why at the start of this Torah portion, Yahweh Vayiqra Moshe. Moshe, the one drawn out of the water, drawn out of the sea. He's the shadow picture of Yeshua. And in this instance, Moshe is set in as a trustee to ensure that the inheritance remains available while Israel is incapable of speaking for themselves. One more slide as we conclude. In its limited capacity, the Levitical system can never produce living sons, living men. Moreover, by denying Yeshua, the only recourse that's going to be available to them will be to continue to once again look towards a third temple golden calf. In other words, an illegitimate, fictional straw man with corrupt DNA. From this source, Elohim will never speak. In the meanwhile, the Melchizedek priesthood is gathering the living stones tabernacle, the sons of Elohim, and he will meet us at the sacred times of Moed, and he will speak to us, restoring the tabernacle of the Most High, the living man. I want you to turn to your neighbor as I close and say, I am a living man. Shabbat Shalom.